Hi, it's Lee, and welcome to the Tesla Economist. Okay, I actually wrote this last night before Tesla was up 80%, so I was feeling bullish from other things, not the fact we just had a big jump in the stock price. But as far as Tesla is concerned, for the short term, perhaps the next 6 months or so, I am feeling quite bullish. It seems like all the negatives are already priced in, and the positives have yet to come. Of course, there can be unknown negatives to come too, but equally unknown positives, like Tesla announcing the next new factory or Ford adopting Tesla FSD. Just like that time when Hertz announced the deal that they would buy so many Teslas, and the stock hit its all-time high as a result. The negatives that are priced in are things like no major 4680 ramp to high-volume production this year, and thus by association, no major Berlin or Texas Model Y ramp. You could say that the Cybertruck is priced in, and perhaps it is, from a fundamentals perspective, but perhaps not from an emotional perspective. The excitement an event like Cybertruck being delivered to customers for the first time will be insane, and bound to be felt in the stock price. The media will also be over it, admitting that Tesla are finally launching this long-awaited vehicle. Then perhaps if Tesla show they do deliver, despite such delays, then perhaps the same holds true for 4680s and FSD. Confidence in those sides of the business will grow, and thus the PE ratio accordingly. There's never been a product this cool in the history of the world that has been launched and available to the public, and on a mass scale, and we don't even know the specs yet. All we know is it's likely the specs and prices have changed quite a bit since the initial launch. I mean, it's been 3 years. Since then, we've seen a lot of inflation, and of course a waiting list close to 2 million orders, along with general popularity in EVs increasing. The Model S Plaid changed specs after just a few months, when they cancelled the 500-mile range version, for example. And I don't think anyone believes Tesla are going to launch a Cybertruck with a 500-mile range version either. If there ever is such a version, then it won't likely be for years, as the batteries have a long way to come still. If there is just one version, I think it will be a dual motor with about 350 miles of range. If there's another, then a tri-motor with perhaps 400 miles of range. But personally, I think it's unlikely we see a 400-mile range version this early. My guess is the current cell density is going to be more around mid-300s. This means Tesla does beat the Ford F-150 Lightning on range. Yes, the Rivian does have 400 miles of range, but does it really count if it costs something like $200,000 to make? Can you imagine a Tesla that costs that much to make? Rivian is a niche brand, and I doubt it will ever be anything more than that, aside from bankrupt or an Amazon van company. Ford is mainstream, and that's the one that matters. The Cybertruck will offer more range, likely at a lower price point, and obviously come with a plethora of additional features. Tesla's unbeatable ASAS for a start, and sure, the Lightning does offer a few other utilitarian features that the Cybertruck doesn't, but I don't think many people care that much, compared to having an actual Cybertruck. We're seeing more and more Cybertrucks come out of production too. It is really going to happen, and fairly soon by the looks of it. Anyway, this will obviously stimulate the stock price. Then if we also include the Model 3 Highland likely out perhaps as early as next month, possibly before the Cybertruck, then if the rumours are true there, I think that is massively undervalued. And the fact that this will happen at a similar time as the Cybertruck is absolutely nuts. 2 new models from Tesla in such a small space of time. Okay, one is just a facelift, but it's looking pretty good, and it comes with a new longer range battery. Then we have FSD12. Sure, it has done nothing for the stock so far, but I'm sure eventually it will catch some wind and the AI movement, and could potentially do a great deal for the stock price. These are all massive, and all happening in the very near future. Then if something like Giga Mexico also breaks ground, I think all these events could send the stock flying. I'm hoping to see it at perhaps mid-300s, hopefully before the end of the year. Like I said though, this is just for what's happening in Tesla. There are other factors at play, like a lot of people are still predicting a recession coming too, but that's all very hard to predict. But if Tesla does achieve these events, then I'm going to be very excited. Elon likely wants these things to happen too. As he said, he's going to start selling some more shares next year, and some of the rumours are that X needs more funding. And as I said, this was the short term, 6 months or so, but after that, Tesla really needs to start showing what they can do. We need to see some evidence. Somehow Tesla got away with not having to deliver anything all year. Something that I was saying could happen, And then Elon announced it on the Q4 earnings call, saying that there'll be very little ramping all year, 4680s won't ramp, Cybertruck will be delayed until the end of the year, FSD, well, Elon's opinion on that is superfluous by this stage, and yet despite Elon saying all this, the stock price rallied back then. People, investors, the market, just here's what it wants to. This was a free year for Tesla. It was so safe to invest with such low expectations for the year. Yes, we've seen production increase, but it's mainly from Shanghai still. Not much in the way of Berlin or Texas ramping. But like I said, it wasn't expected to. So there are a few big exciting events coming up. But after that, then Tesla really needs to start delivering next year, or the stock price will tank again. Investors are only so patient. Then on top of that, there'll always be some bad macro news at some point, and some FUD that often happens to be around a similar time. Then shorts get in, and market manipulation, and Tesla's stock price gets depressingly low. Elon got a free pass this year, aside from the Cybertruck launching, which still hasn't yet. But yes, very likely will. My guess would be October. But we have to see it ramping well next year. It doesn't have to hit volume production, and might not, despite Elon saying it will by the end of next year. But if it's even on a run rate of about 150,000 a year by the end of 2024, then that's probably good enough, as long as it's still ramping at a reasonable rate. A lot of the ramping will have to do with cell supply though, and I do not hold my breath for Tesla having enough in-house. I think Panasonic will come and save the day sometime in mid-2024 if Tesla are lucky. Tesla do need to show their in-house cell production ramping next year though. If we don't hit a run rate of about 50 gigawatt hours a year by the end of next year for 4680s, then it's very disappointing, and more unreliable targets from Elon. I'm not saying they won't hit that, I'm just saying that they really need to start showing some serious progress. And we're still getting told 50% year-over-year growth, or 20 million units a year by 2030. These are Elon's latest numbers still. But the run rate Tesla was on by the end of 2022 is only about 10% less than what will be by the end of this year. And without a huge 4680 ramp, I don't see how they can beat 10% next year either. At this rate, Mexico won't be producing any significant number of cars next year either, which means it's all down to 4680 supply for the Cybertruck and Model Y, if we want to see any production increase. And what about energy? The big hope that so many investors had at the start of the year. The Megapack factory will hit 40 gigawatt hours a year and have 50% margins, is what a lot of the community was saying. Well, Megapacks just slashed their prices too, so there goes any massive margins. However, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. There is evidence that CATL have a brand new factory that can supply the Model 3 Highland and Model Y Juniper new longer range batteries for the rear-wheel drive versions. And then those old LFP cells that are currently being used in those models can be transferred to Megapack factories. Then Megapack supply increases and thus prices drop, but margins are good because of further economies of scale at higher capacities. So it's hard to know. Next year is a critical year though. Tesla really need to start demonstrating they can get back to this 50% year-over-year growth. They need to show they can make their 4680 sales at a run rate that actually has a noticeable difference on the company. Megapacks need to really ramp, we need to see the new Gen 3 vehicle, and we need to see good progress on Giga Mexico. If some of these events do go well, then indeed the stock could run to new all-time highs next year. If they are delayed, then it could get choppy. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon.